I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine you're scrolling through the internet late at night.
Right. We've all been there, just mindlessly scrolling.
Exactly. You've gone past the usual social media feeds, past the news, and you stumble into this really niche forum.
Okay, setting the scene.
But instead of video games or movie reviews or, whatever you'd expect, you find a community of teenage boys, and they are holding metal calipers.
Wait, metal calipers, like for engineering?
Yeah, exactly. They are physically bringing these cold, clinical metal measuring tools up to their faces,
Yeah.
meticulously measuring the exact distance between their eyes down to the absolute millimeter.
That's incredibly intense.
It really is. They are obsessing over the precise angles of their facial bones, calculating ratios like they're trying to pass an advanced calculus exam or something.
Wow.
It is this bizarre, highly analytical, and honestly kind of alarming internet subculture. They treat the human face like it's a geometry problem that they're just desperately trying to solve.
It is the absolute definition of engineering precision, but, applied to the most deeply personal, vulnerable part of human identity.
Right.
It's not just a passing interest or some grooming trend. It's a total consuming fixation on millimeters of bone structure. They're treating their faces the exact same way an architect would treat the structural blueprints of a skyscraper.
Which is terrifying.
It is, just constantly scanning for the fatal flaw in the foundation that's going to bring the whole building down.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it sounds like science fiction or some dystopian novel, but it's a very real, incredibly pervasive movement happening right now on our actual internet.
Yeah, it's highly documented at this point.
Today, our mission on this deep dive is to explore this extreme online trend. It's a movement born out of young men trying to literally hack their physical appearance.
And the community calls it Looksmaxxing, right?
Yes, exactly. Looksmaxxing.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we are not just going to gawk at the medically terrifying methods these kids are using. We're going to use this as a jumping off point.
I like that approach.
We are going to pivot from their intense obsession with rigid bone structure to the actual hard biological science of what genuinely changes how we look and how we age.
Because that's where the real power is.
Exactly. And I promise you, you won't need a medical degree to follow along with this. You just need an appetite for a completely mind-bending biological journey.
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology. You look at these young men with their calipers, and before you judge the bizarre behavior, you actually have to validate the instinct behind what they're doing.
Okay, validated how?
Well, the instinct is a desire for agency. They want control over their lives, their romantic prospects, and just how they're perceived by the world.
Sure, which is a totally normal human desire.
Right. But the execution, the specific methods they've landed on, are not just dangerously flawed. They represent a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology.
How so?
They think the secret to appearance is locked away in inflexible bone, when the truth is it's actually found in our highly adaptable, incredibly dynamic, daily cellular inputs.
Oh, that is such a great distinction. So let's start by walking right into the dark, fascinating world of this Looksmaxxing community. To understand what they're doing, you first have to understand what they believe to their core.
The philosophy.
Yeah. And the philosophy driving this whole thing is incredibly fatalistic. They've adopted this rigid belief that your looks are entirely 100% genetic.
It's a very bleak worldview.
Extremely. Your genetics, according to them, strictly determine your romantic outcomes, your social standing, basically your entire trajectory in life.
And the inevitable conclusion they draw from this genetic determinism is that most of them have simply drawn a bad hand.
Right, the genetic lottery.
Exactly. Think about the psychological weight of that. If you accept the premise that your life is entirely dictated by the genetic lottery of your facial structure, and you feel like your life isn't working out the way you want it to.
Maybe you're isolated or struggling to connect.
Right. It provides a very convenient, albeit incredibly dark, explanation. It gave an entire generation of young men who felt invisible a concrete physical reason for their invisibility.
Wow. So in their minds, it's not their personality or their environment or their social skills.
No, in their minds, it is the millimeter width of their jawline.
That is so heavy. And I was reading through some of the vernacular they use, and it breeds this incredibly specific, almost impenetrable vocabulary.
Oh, the terminology is wild.
It is. They aren't just looking in the mirror saying, I wish I was better looking. They're obsessing over things like mid-face forward projection.
Yes, the mid-face projection.
They are measuring their bizygomatic width.
Yeah.
They are looking at the exact depth of their orbital rims, which is the bone around the eye socket,
Hmm.
to determine if they have what they call hunter eyes versus prey eyes.
They are essentially treating the face as a collection of vectors and angles. It tracks something called canthal tilt.
Canthal tilt, what is that?
It's the angle between the inner and outer corner of the eye. They actually take photographs with identical lighting over months to monitor microscopic changes in this tilt.
Identical lighting, just for an angle.
Yes, to eliminate any shadows that might give a false reading. They debate endlessly on forums whether their cheekbones have positive or negative vector projection.
That sounds exhausting.
It is a hyper-quantification of aesthetics. They're attempting to turn the highly subjective, complex experience of human attraction into a sterile spreadsheet of skeletal dimensions.
Which naturally leads us to the protocols. Because if you believe your bones are your destiny, and you are desperately unhappy with your destiny, you're going to try to change your bones.
And this is where it gets concerning.
Concerning is an understatement. This is where my jaw dropped researching this, because it goes from strange to genuinely terrifying. Some of the methods are just bizarre, like mewing.
Right, mewing.
This is a massive trend. It's where they press their entire tongue against the roof of their mouth, applying constant pressure for hours a day. And from what I understand, this is actually based on a real but heavily extrapolated orthodontic theory, right?
Yes, the concept of orthotropics. It was largely championed by a British orthodontist named John Mew, hence mewing.
Ah, okay, so that's where the name comes from.
Exactly. The original theory suggested that proper tongue posture in growing children could influence the development of the palate and jawline. The idea is that the maxilla, the upper jawbone, is malleable during developmental years.
Right, in kids, because they're still growing.
Exactly. But what we are seeing in the Looksmaxxing community is teenagers and full-grown adults attempting this. They are applying massive, sustained pressure to fully fused adult skulls, hoping to somehow push their maxilla forward and up to achieve a more chiseled look.
Which just scientifically does not work on an adult skull, right?
Our bones are fused. It's an exercise in futility.
And mewing is basically the mild entry-level end of the spectrum. I fell down a rabbit hole reading about the physical training they do.
The mastic gum.
Yes. Some of these individuals are chewing mastic gum, which is this incredibly tough resinous gum derived from a tree for 3, 4, even 5 hours a day.
Which is an incredible amount of stress on the jaw.
The goal is to induce hypertrophy, literally massive muscle growth, in the masseter muscle, which is the primary muscle you use to chew. They're treating their face like a bicep they can pump up at the gym.
It's just wild.
I even saw a post about guys using weighted harnesses strapped to their heads to train specific neck muscles to get a wider, more masculine neck profile.
It's a complete mechanization of the body. They're applying the principles of bodybuilding to the delicate, complex structures of the face and neck.
Well, chewing gum for 5 hours,
Yeah.
that can't be safe.
The mastic gum is particularly interesting because chronic excessive chewing can lead to severe temporomandibular joint issues, TMJ.
Oh, I've heard of TMJ. It's incredibly painful.
Very. You can wear down the enamel of your teeth, induce chronic headaches, and actually cause asymmetrical muscle growth if you aren't chewing perfectly evenly. But in their pursuit of the ideal aesthetic, these biological consequences are completely ignored.
But then you get to the absolute extreme. The most terrifying protocol I came across.
Bone smash.
Bone smashing. It is exactly what it sounds like. These young men are literally taking hard objects, hammers, weights, even just their own knuckles, and striking their own jawlines and cheekbones.
Yes.
They are purposely causing blunt force trauma to their own faces. The logic, if you can call it that, is that as the microfractures heal, the bone will grow back thicker and reshape their facial structure. It is horrifying.
It is a profound level of desperation masked as proactive self-improvement. They are latching onto a gross misunderstanding of a physiological concept called Wolff's Law.
Wolff's Law, what is that?
Wolff's Law states that bone in a healthy person or animal will adapt to the loads under which it is placed. If loading on a particular bone increases, the bone will remodel itself over time to become stronger to resist that sort of loading. We see this in martial artists who condition their shins.
Right, but conditioning a shin bone to take a kick in a Muay Thai fight is very different than taking a hammer to your orbital bone.
Entirely different.
To me, bone smashing is like, imagine you want to make your car faster and more aerodynamic. But instead of tuning the engine or changing the suspension, you decide to repeatedly crash the car into a brick wall at 5 miles an hour.
hoping it reshapes itself.
Right, hoping that when the metal frame bends and crumples, it somehow magically contorts into the shape of a Ferrari. You're attacking the foundational structure with blunt trauma, hoping the collateral damage somehow results in a masterpiece. It's absolute madness.
That car chassis analogy is highly accurate because the facial bones are not thick, load-bearing structures like a femur or a tibia. They are incredibly delicate, complex plates designed to protect the brain, the eyes, and house the sinus cavities. When you subject them to blunt force trauma, you aren't stimulating neat, symmetrical growth.
What are you actually doing?
You are risking severe fractures, asymmetrical calcification, meaning the bone might grow back lumpy and uneven, and irreversible nerve damage.
I just have to ask, how does such a dark, fatalistic view, this core idea that you are doomed by your genetics, simultaneously spawn a community that is so obsessively, dangerously proactive?
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It seems like a massive contradiction. I can't change anything, so I'm going to spend 6 hours a day hitting my face to change it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the cultural moment we are in, it actually makes perfect sense. We are living in a world of absolute information overload.
Yeah, that's undeniably true.
The economy, global events, social algorithms dictating who gets seen and who doesn't, it all feels entirely out of the individual's control.
So it's a reaction to helplessness.
Yes. For these young men, focusing on a highly specific, measurable metric like the width of their jaw offers a powerful, albeit false, sense of control. As I mentioned earlier, their desire for agency, the instinct to take charge of their physical form in their lives, is a very human, very understandable drive.
That makes a lot of sense.
The tragedy here is that they are pointing this incredible obsession, discipline, and pain tolerance at the exact wrong biological target.
They're aiming all of this at the inflexible bone structure.
Precisely. They are trying to force permanent, rigid bone to change through sheer force, completely ignoring the adaptable, living, cellular health that actually dictates human appearance and aging.
Wow.
They are fighting a war against their own skeletons while ignoring the biological metropolis that sits right on top of it.
Okay, so if beating your face with a hammer and fighting your skeleton is the wrong target, what is the right one?
The tissue itself.
Right. And the research we have for this deep dive makes a really powerful pivot here. It states that the core premise of Looksmaxxing, that your appearance is a function of your daily biological inputs, not just your genetics, is actually profoundly real.
It is very real.
Genetics might load the gun, but our daily inputs pull the trigger.
Yes, and this is where the science gets incredibly empowering. The scaffolding of your appearance, the thing that dictates how you look today and how you will age over the next decade, is not your skeletal structure.
Okay.
The true biological scaffolding relies on 4 specific, highly malleable metrics.
Let's hear them.
Your collagen, your inflammation levels, your glycation rate, and your skin's biological age.
Okay, let's break those down because this is the fluid, input-driven reality of cellular biology that stands in total contrast to the rigid genetic view of those forums.
We need to define these terms deeply.
Let's start with collagen. We hear about it all the time in commercials for anti-aging creams or protein powders. We know it's a structural protein, but what actually is it doing in the skin?
To understand collagen, you have to visualize the dermis, which is the thick layer of living tissue below the epidermis, the surface skin.
Okay, picturing the dermis.
The dermis is not just a solid mass. It's a dynamic environment called the extracellular matrix. Think of the extracellular matrix like a microscopic, 3-dimensional biological city.
A biological city. I like that.
In this city, you have specialized cells called fibroblasts, which are like the factories. These factories produce collagen. And collagen isn't just a generic blob of protein. It is a meticulously constructed triple helix.
Triple helix? Like DNA.
Similar structure, yes.
Yeah.
Imagine 3 steel cables twisted around each other tightly. That is a collagen molecule. It provides incredible tensile strength.
So it's basically the support system.
It is literally the steel scaffolding that prevents your skin from sagging into your jawline under the constant pull of gravity.
Okay, so collagen is the steel scaffolding. Then we have inflammation, the second metric. We usually think of inflammation as a good thing, right? Like when you sprain your ankle, it swells up because blood and immune cells are rushing to heal it. Why is it a metric for appearance?
Because we aren't talking about acute inflammation like a sprained ankle. We are talking about chronic, systemic, low-grade inflammation.
Systemic meaning the whole body.
Yes. This is when your immune system is essentially stuck in a loop, constantly misfiring and releasing inflammatory chemicals into your bloodstream. When this happens, those chemicals act like biological rust on the steel scaffolding of your collagen. It degrades the tissue over time.
That makes perfect sense. The rust on the scaffolding. Okay, the third metric is your glycation rate. We're going to get into this deeply later, but essentially, this is about sugar molecules binding to proteins in your body and ruining their structure, right?
Correct. If collagen is the steel scaffolding and inflammation is the rust, glycation is like taking those flexible steel cables and coating them in a hard, brittle, crystallized shell until they snap under pressure.
That is a brutal mental image. And the final metric is biological age. I find this concept fascinating. It's the idea that how old your cells act has very little to do with the calendar year you were born.
Exactly. Chronological age is how many times you have orbited the sun. Biological age is a measurement of the epigenetic degradation of your cells.
So wear and tear.
Yes, through cellular wear and tear, DNA damage, and the shortening of telomeres, a 30-year-old can have the skin biology of a 45-year-old, or vice versa.
Wow.
The crucial concept to grasp here is that everything happening on the outside, the health of your skin, the visible signs of aging, the texture, the laxity, is merely a downstream expression of what is happening on the inside.
So the outside is just a symptom of the inside.
Yes. Your external appearance is a highly accurate mirror reflecting your internal hydration status, your hormonal health, and your oxidative stress load. The Looksmaxxers view the face as a static block of marble to be chiseled.
Right, with hammers.
Biology views the face as a dynamic living system that is constantly being demolished and rebuilt based on the materials and signals you provide it every single day.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The sheer tragic irony of the situation. You have these guys spending hours every single day tracking millimeters of bone on a photograph.
Chewing resin until their jaw joints are screaming in pain.
Yes, while completely, utterly ignoring the invisible cellular scaffolding that is actually going to dictate how they look in 10 years.
It is the ultimate misallocation of resources. They have the discipline of a professional athlete, but they lack the correct biological map. They are running incredibly fast in the absolute wrong direction.
Which is so sad, honestly.
It is. And what I find so empowering about the science we are digging into today is that it completely validates their desire for control. While genetics absolutely play a role, nobody is denying that bone structure exists. The research shows that the preservation and optimization of your appearance is overwhelmingly a function of daily biological inputs.
Meaning, you actually do have the agency that these young men are so desperately seeking.
You just have to know which inputs to manipulate.
And to understand how to manipulate those inputs, to build that cellular scaffolding up and keep it structurally sound, we first have to look at what destroys it. We have to move from this theoretical framework of biology into the real-world inputs.
The stuff we consume.
Exactly. Let's look at one of the most common, socially acceptable, and highly destructive inputs out there: alcohol.
It's the perfect place to start because our society largely views alcohol through a lens of relaxation. It's a social lubricant, a way to wind down after a long week.
Right. Nobody thinks of it as a weapon against their face.
People generally aren't visualizing it as a biological wrecking ball swinging directly into their cellular scaffolding.
Exactly. And I was diving into this fascinating research that proves exactly how destructive it is. There's this 2021 study published in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology.
The Colombian study.
Yes, they took 350 patients across 2 different healthcare centers down in Colombia. And the researchers weren't just looking at standard chronological aging. They were looking at something specifically called photoaging. Can you define that for us?
Photoaging is a critical distinction in dermatology. Chronological aging is just the inevitable passage of time, the natural slowdown of cellular renewal.
Getting older, basically.
Right. Photoaging, however, refers to the premature, visible skin changes caused by the cumulative effects of ultraviolet radiation from the sun, environmental stress, pollution, and systemic lifestyle factors.
So it's basically the accelerated degradation of the face.
Exactly. If you look at someone who spent 40 years working outdoors without sunscreen versus someone who worked in an office, the structural difference in their skin is photoaging. It includes dyspigmentation, deep structural wrinkling, and a loss of elasticity.
Right, so the researchers in Colombia took these 350 patients and they measured all the lifestyle variables. They looked at their lifetime sun exposure, whether they smoked, what their weekly exercise habits were, and crucially, their alcohol consumption.
A very thorough lifestyle audit.
Yeah. Then they had clinical dermatologists visually and medically evaluate each patient's degree of photoaging using a validated clinical scale. They wanted to see, in a real-world population, what lifestyle factors were actually driving the physical degradation of the face.
And the findings were unambiguous. The The patients who consumed alcohol showed significantly greater progression of photoaging compared to those who abstained or rarely drank.
It was that stark.
Yes, the data clearly statistically linked the consumption of alcohol to the accelerated breakdown of the skin's youthful characteristics.
But why? That is what we are here to do on this deep dive. Not just give you the headline conclusion, but explore the actual mechanics. Why does a drink, something that goes into your stomach and gets processed by your liver, cause the skin on your face to age faster?
It's a chain reaction.
The data breaks down the biological mechanisms, and it is essentially a multi-front attack. First, let's talk about the diuretic effect.
Alcohol is a known diuretic, meaning it actively promotes the production of urine, forcing your body to excrete water at an accelerated rate.
Which is why you always have to go to the bathroom when you're drinking.
Exactly. It does this by suppressing a hormone called vasopressin, which usually tells your kidneys to hold on to water. But this dehydration doesn't just happen in your kidneys or your bladder. The body pulls water directly out of your peripheral cells to maintain blood volume.
And that includes the millions of cells that make up your skin.
Yes. When you consume alcohol, you are systemically, cellularly dehydrating your body.
So wait, I have a question here. If alcohol dehydrates the cell, why does my face look bloated and puffy the morning after a night of drinking? Shouldn't it look shrunken and tight if there's no water?
That's a brilliant question, and it highlights the paradox of alcohol consumption. You are experiencing cellular dehydration, but simultaneously, alcohol causes systemic vasodilation.
Vasodilation. So the widening of your blood vessels.
Exactly. Your body, sensing the dehydration, also triggers an emergency response to hold on to any fluid it can find in the interstitial spaces.
The interstitial spaces.
The areas outside the cells. So your individual skin cells are shriveled and starved of water, losing their structural turgor pressure, while the tissue surrounding them is swollen with pooled, stagnant fluid and dilated blood vessels.
Oh, wow.
That's why you get the puffy, red, inflamed look, but the skin itself feels dry and looks dull.
Wow. Okay, so the cells themselves are wilted. It's like a houseplant that hasn't been watered. The leaves lose their rigid structure and droop. The skin cells literally lose their internal support. And without that internal water volume, the fine lines and wrinkles physically cave in and deepen.
Exactly. And a dehydrated, deflated skin cell doesn't reflect light the same way a hydrated, plump one does. That is why the skin immediately takes on a dull, grayish texture after heavy alcohol consumption.
So that's the dehydration front. But the data also highlights the systemic inflammation, which we touched on earlier with the rust analogy.
Yes, alcohol doesn't just pass passively through your system. As your liver breaks down alcohol, it produces a highly toxic byproduct called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde triggers widespread inflammatory pathways throughout the entire body. This systemic inflammation is highly destructive to our scaffolding because it actively accelerates the breakdown of collagen and elastin.
How does it do that?
When your body is inflamed, it releases enzymes that essentially act like biological scissors, snipping apart the triple helix collagen fibers.
Oh, man.
So alcohol isn't just dehydrating the tissue, it is initiating a chemical cascade that actively dismantles the very proteins holding your face up.
And as if dehydrating the cells and chemically dismantling the proteins wasn't enough, there is a third front to this attack: defense depletion. The research notes that alcohol aggressively depletes the skin's antioxidants.
Antioxidants are your cellular bodyguards. Throughout the day, your skin is bombarded by UV rays and pollution, which create reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
Reactive oxygen species.
These are highly unstable molecules that bounce around inside your cells, causing oxidative damage to your DNA and proteins. Your skin relies on a deep reserve of antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E to neutralize these unstable molecules.
And alcohol ruins that.
The process of metabolizing alcohol requires massive amounts of antioxidants. It essentially drains your body's reserves to process the toxin, leaving your skin entirely defenseless against the sun and the environment. It strips away your biological armor.
So it drains the water from the cells, unleashes chemical scissors to cut the structural beams, and fires all the cellular security guards. It really is a devastating multi-front attack. But this brings up a crucial question for you, the listener. So what does this all mean for the casual weekend drinker? Is this level of destruction only happening to people who are drinking heavily every single day?
The science is very sobering on this point. This multi-front cellular attack, the dehydration, the inflammation, the antioxidant depletion, happens every time you drink.
Every single time.
Every time. It is not exclusively a consequence of chronic alcoholism. Even casual, moderate consumption initiates this cascade. Obviously, the dose makes the poison, and chronic drinking will accelerate it massively. But you cannot consume alcohol without triggering these pathways to some degree.
That is wild.
Their research actually suggests a phenomenal biological experiment. Try going 30 days entirely alcohol-free.
A 30-day reset.
Precisely. The promise of this challenge isn't moral, it's purely biological. Because you are halting this constant cyclical cycle of destruction, your natural cellular repair mechanisms, which are constantly trying to rebuild that collagen scaffolding, will finally have a chance to catch up and outpace the degradation.
The body starts winning the war again.
Yes. For most people, the difference in the skin's structural integrity, the hydration, and the reduction in underlying redness will be visibly apparent to the naked eye after just 1 month.
Okay, so if alcohol is the wrecking ball that is systematically destroying the cellular scaffolding, how do we supercharge the rebuilding process? The researchers in that 2021 Colombian study didn't just find the destructive input, they accidentally stumbled onto the exact mechanism that rebuilding the skin relies on.
Which is incredible.
It is. And this brings us to what I think is the most surprising, awe-inspiring finding we are covering today.
It is a phenomenal pivot in the literature. Alongside tracking the destructive variables like alcohol and smoking, they tracked exercise. And the secondary finding of that study was that regular physical exercise appeared as a powerful, undeniable protective factor against photoaging.
Really? Just working out.
Yes. The patients who consistently moved their bodies showed significantly less structural degradation, less wrinkling, and better skin tone than those who were sedentary, regardless of other factors.
Now, we need to go incredibly deep into the biological mechanisms here, because this completely reframes what hitting the gym actually does to your body. We usually think of exercise as burning calories, maybe building some bicep strength, improving cardiovascular endurance. But this research introduces the concept that skeletal muscle is actually an endocrine organ. Let's unpack that. What does that actually mean?
We typically think of endocrine organs as specific glands, like the thyroid in your neck or the adrenal glands above your kidneys, whose sole biological job is to secrete hormones into the bloodstream to communicate with other distant parts of the body.
Right, that's what we learned in school.
What modern exercise physiology reveals is that skeletal muscle, your quads, your biceps, your chest, doesn't just physically contract to move your bones, it also secretes.
It secretes things.
Yes. When you exercise and force a muscle to contract against resistance, it acts as a massive endocrine organ, synthesizing and releasing specialized signaling proteins directly into your bloodstream. These proteins are called myokines.
Myokines. Myo meaning muscle, kine meaning movement or chemical messenger.
Yeah.
So the muscle is essentially manufacturer and releasing chemical text messages.
Exactly.
And the research specifically zeroes in on one of these myokines, interleukin-15 or IL-15. This is where the story gets cinematic on a cellular level. Let's track the journey of IL-15.
Imagine the process. You are at the gym lifting a heavy weight, or you're doing a strenuous run. The intense physical contraction of the muscle fibers causes physiological stress.
The good kind of stress.
Right. The muscle responds to this stress by upregulating the production of IL-15. This myokine is then secreted out of the muscle tissue and enters the vast highway of your circulatory system.
It goes into the blood.
It circulates throughout your entire body, traveling away from the bicep or the quad until it eventually reaches the deep layer of your skin, the dermis.
So the IL-15 has traveled from the gym stress bicep through the blood and has arrived at the skin on your face. What does it do when it gets there?
Once in the dermis, IL-15 acts like a homing missile, seeking out those fibroblasts we discussed earlier.
The cellular factories.
Yes, the factory is responsible for producing collagen. The IL-15 physically binds to receptors on the outside of the fibroblasts. When it docks, it acts as a biological key, unlocking a profound change inside the cell. It directly stimulates a process called mitochondrial biogenesis.
Mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria.
Exactly. We all remember from high school biology that the mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. They produce ATP, the energy currency of the body.
Right.
Synthesizing a massive complex protein like a collagen triple helix is incredibly energetically expensive for a cell. By triggering mitochondrial biogenesis, the IL-15 from your muscles is essentially telling the skin cells to build more power plants.
It upgrades the energy grid.
It upgrades the energy grid of the skin. With massive amounts of new energy available and a direct chemical mandate from the muscle, the skin drastically ramps up its synthesis of new collagen and elastin.
That is unbelievable. It's like your bicep is sending a text message to your cheekbone saying, hey, we're doing some heavy structural remodeling down here. You should upgrade your power grid and start rebuilding too. The muscle is literally instructing the face to produce more structural protein.
It's a beautiful system.
It is. But I have to push back a little here just to play devil's advocate. If my muscles are doing all this cellular remodeling from the inside, does this mean all those expensive topical creams, the retinols, the hyaluronic acid serums I buy at the pharmacy, are totally useless compared to a gym membership?
It's not that topical treatments are useless. They certainly have their place in skincare. But we have to be explicitly clear about the nature of this research. These researchers were isolating the variable of physical training to observe structural changes at the deep biological level.
So they weren't looking at creams at all?
No. Topical creams primarily address the epidermis, the dead outer layer of the skin, and attempt to coax the underlying dermis from the outside in. Some ingredients like retinol can penetrate, but it's an uphill battle.
Whereas exercise is different.
Exercise, via these myokines like IL-15, is a profound inside-out mechanism. It is fundamentally altering the genetic expression and structural integrity of the living tissue from within, using the body's own systemic communication network.
And there is a comprehensive 2025 review that looked at this exact phenomenon, focusing on something they called skin span. I love that term.
Yes, skin span is a fascinating concept. Similar to health span versus lifespan, skin span refers to the chronological period during which your skin maintains a youthful, highly functional, resilient, and healthy appearance, regardless of your actual age.
So how long you can keep that tissue functioning well?
Exactly. The researchers in this 2025 review wanted to see if exercise could extend the skin span. They implemented a rigorous 16-week protocol combining both aerobic and resistance training.
16 weeks. 4 months of consistent, intense movement. And what did they find when they look at the cellular structure of the skin after those 4 months?
They found profound, deeply measurable changes. The training significantly improved the extracellular matrix gene expression. Remember the biological city we talked about?
Yep, the scaffolding city.
The exercise literally thickened the dermis, adding density to the scaffolding, and measurably increased its elasticity. The researchers concluded that the tissue was, by every objective, measurable biological metric, younger after the 16-week protocol.
The physical stress of the exercise had reversed the cellular clock of the skin.
It had.
So we have the IL-15 driving new collagen, making the tissue biologically younger. But the exercise is doing something else, too. It's playing defense. The data notes that exercise actively reduces pro-inflammatory cytokines.
Exactly. This is the duality of exercise. While the alcohol we discussed earlier promotes systemic inflammation and unleashes those chemical scissors, exercise does the exact opposite.
It cleans it up.
Regular physical activity reduces the basal circulation of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are the signaling molecules that tell the body to stay in an inflamed, destructive state. Simultaneously, the muscle contractions increase the systemic production of IGF-1.
IGF-1. Insulin-like growth factor 1. What does that do?
IGF-1 is a highly potent systemic growth factor that circulates through the entire body, supporting tissue repair and cellular regeneration. So exercise is fundamentally altering your biochemical environment.
So it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
It is actively clearing out the inflammatory garbage that is trying to degrade your face, while simultaneously flooding the system with massive repair signals and new energy grids for the fibroblasts.
This raises an important question, doesn't it? It fundamentally challenges how we view exercise as a society.
Absolutely.
If you are only looking at your time on the treadmill or under a barbell as a way to burn off the calories you ate at lunch or a way to lose body fat, you are missing the absolute biological miracle that is occurring inside you.
You're completely missing the bigger picture.
Exercise is not just mechanical work. It is a vital, systemic, biological communication system. It is a language your organs use to talk to each other, and it is absolutely essential for the maintenance, repair, and youthfulness of every tissue in your body, prominently including the skin on your face.
It is quite literally a systemic youth serum generated by your own skeletal muscle. Okay, so let's recap the biological ledger so far. We now know what tears the scaffolding down: alcohol, which acts as a diuretic and inflammatory wrecking ball.
Right.
And we know what sends the signal to rebuild at exercise through the endocrine function of our muscles sending IL-15 to the skin. But what happens if the building materials themselves are fundamentally compromised?
Then the signaling doesn't matter.
Exactly. You can have all the IL-15 you want shouting at your skin factories to build new collagen, But if the raw materials they're using are toxic, the building is still going to collapse. This leads us directly into the deep science of our daily diets, specifically the trap of sugar and a highly destructive biochemical process called glycation.
This is where we transition from the signaling mechanisms telling the body what to do to the structural materials, what the body actually uses to build. Glycation is a biological process that is likely happening inside your body right now, and it is directly, inextricably linked to the specific types of foods you choose to consume.
The research gets very specific here. It's not just a blanket statement that, junk food is bad. It singles out refined sugar and rapidly digested carbohydrates.
Yes.
When you consume these, think soda, white bread, highly processed baked goods, sugary cereals, your digestive system breaks them down incredibly quickly, causing a massive rapid spike in blood glucose.
Yeah.
And this is the trigger point where the glycation process begins.
Correct. Your body is designed to handle a certain amount of glucose. It's our primary fuel. But when you have excessively high levels of circulating glucose from these refined carbohydrates, the sugar molecules don't just patiently wait to be used for energy.
What do?
They become highly reactive. They go looking for things to attach to. Glycation is a non-enzymatic reaction where these free-floating glucose molecules forcefully chemically attach themselves to proteins and lipids throughout your entire body.
Non-enzymatic. I want to highlight that term because it's crucial, meaning the body isn't using an enzyme to intentionally orchestrate this process to serve a biological purpose. It's not planned.
No, not at all.
It's a chaotic, uncontrolled chemical collision happening in your bloodstream.
Precisely. It is molecular collateral damage. A good analogy is the Maillard reaction in cooking. When you sear a steak in a hot pan, the heat causes the sugars and amino acids in the meat to react, creating that brown, crusty exterior.
The crust on the steak.
That is a form of glycation. When you have chronically high blood sugar, you are essentially very slowly initiating a similar caramelization process inside your own body.
Caramelizing your own organs.
Exactly. And when this uncontrolled collision happens in your skin, the glucose preferentially attaches to the most abundant, long-lasting proteins available, your collagen and elastin fibers.
The very structural proteins we've been talking about this entire time. When the glucose forcefully attaches to the collagen, it forms something called advanced glycation end products. And the scientific acronym for this is almost two perfect AGs.
It is an incredibly apt acronym because the accumulation of AGEs literally biologically ages the tissue. Let's look at the mechanics. When a pristine collagen fiber becomes glycated, when it is essentially covered in these sugar molecules, it fundamentally changes its physical properties.
How does it change?
It ceases to be a flexible, resilient support structure. The AGEs make the collagen stiff and brittle. They cause physical discoloration, which contributes to the yellowing or dullness of aging skin. And perhaps most destructively, they make the collagen stubbornly resistant to the normal repair processes.
Meaning the body can't fix it?
Usually enzymes come in, clean up old collagen, and replace it. But glycated collagen is like concrete. The body's repair mechanisms can't break it down easily.
Let me try to visualize this. I'm picturing healthy collagen as a thick, flexible, bouncy rubber band. You can stretch it, you can twist it, and the moment you let go, it snaps right back into its original shape.
Perfect analogy.
That's healthy, youthful skin that bounces back when you smile or frown. But glycation is like taking that beautiful, flexible rubber band and dipping it into a vat of liquid candy shell, like a candy apple, and letting it harden.
A sugar-coated rubber band.
Right. Now you have a sugar-coated rubber band. If you try to stretch it or move it, the sugar crystallizes, the rubber band loses absolutely all of its elasticity, and if you pull hard enough, it just snaps into a dry twig under the pressure.
That is a near-perfect visualization of the mechanical failure that occurs at the cellular level. The glycated collagen literally cannot bear the mechanical stress of facial movement.
So just by moving your face, you're breaking it.
Every time you smile, blink, or speak, you are stressing that brittle structure, leading to microtears, sagging, and the formation of deep, permanent wrinkling. And this is heavily supported by the literature.
Yeah, let's talk about the data.
There is a massive review published in the Journal of Oxidative Medicine and Cellular Longevity. This wasn't a small, isolated study with 10 people. This review looked at decades of data and confirmed that dietary carbohydrates, explicitly those sourced from highly processed foods, directly and undeniably drive skin aging at a cellular level through this exact mechanism.
The continuous accumulation of AGEs in the dermal matrix.
Yes.
It's not just a holistic theory. It's a well-documented, universally established biological pathway. But it gets worse, because biology is rarely simple. The research introduces this concept of a two-front war.
The compounding effect.
Right. Glycation doesn't happen in a vacuum. A diet high in processed foods and refined sugars doesn't just create AGs. We know from earlier that it also drives chronic, systemic, low-grade inflammation.
Yes, and this is where the compounding effect of a modern processed diet becomes catastrophic for the cellular scaffolding. We have front one, the glycation directly attacking the collagen, turning it into those brittle AGEs.
Candy shell on the rubber band.
Simultaneously, we have front two. The systemic inflammation caused by the bad diet acts as an aggressive signaling mechanism. The inflammation activates a specific class of destructive enzymes in the skin known as matrix metalloproteinases, or MMPs.
Matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs. If the IL-15 from exercise is the construction crew, what are the MMPs?
MMPs are the demolition crew. They are enzymes whose specific biological function is to degrade extracellular matrix proteins. They literally eat collagen.
I just eat it.
Now, in a perfectly healthy, balanced system, MMPs are carefully regulated. You need them. They act as a highly controlled cleanup crew, carefully snipping away old, damaged tissue to clear space for the fibroblasts to lay down new, fresh collagen.
Okay, so they have a purpose.
But chronic inflammation removes all the safety regulations. It sends the MMPs into massive overdrive. They become a rogue demolition crew. They begin actively degrading and destroying the exact same healthy collagen that the glycation process is simultaneously attacking.
It's a literal two-front biological war on your face. The sugar is caramelizing and crystallizing the structural beams, making them brittle and fragile, and the systemic inflammation is sending in rogue demolition crews to eat whatever structural integrity is left.
It's a vicious cycle.
The compounding rate of destruction is incredible when you view it from a biochemical level. And honestly, this brings me right back to those forums. It brings me back to the Looksmaxxers.
The irony is profound when you view their habits through this biochemical lens.
It really is. It's actually tragic. You have these young men utterly obsessively dedicated to optimizing their appearance. They're measuring their faces with calipers. They're chewing mastic gum for hours a day until their jaws lock up, trying to force the masseter muscle to grow to get a sharper jawline.
And what are they likely fueling that with?
Given the demographics and the gamer culture crossover, it's highly probable they are drinking highly processed, sugary energy drinks or sodas. They are entirely unaware that while they are trying to mechanically stress their jaw into a new shape on the outside, they are biochemically destroying the very skin that sits on top of that jawline from the inside through rapid glycation and MMP activation.
It highlights the supreme tragedy of their misplaced discipline. They are working incredibly hard against their own biology. They're trying to build a castle on a foundation they are actively setting on fire.
Okay, so we have deeply diagnosed the biological threats. We know alcohol dehydrates the cells, drains antioxidants, and inflames the tissue. We know processed sugar creates brittle AGEs and activates collagen-eating MMP enzymes. We know exercise releases IL-15 to build new scaffolding and upgrades the cellular power grids.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Now, we must construct the actual scientifically bashed protocol. If Looksmaxxing is fundamentally about optimizing appearance, how do we actually do it using real biological materials rather than internet myths and bone smashing?
The beauty of the biological reality we've explored today is that the ultimate protocol isn't found in a bizarre torture device or a risky surgery. It is remarkably simple, though not easy.
Right, simple but hard.
It relies entirely on providing the body with the correct dietary raw materials necessary to run the complex biochemical systems we've just spent the last hour discussing.
The science breaks it down into 3 specific material categories that you must ingest. Let's start with protein. And let's get specific, because earlier we talked about how collagen is a complex triple helix. It's not just generic protein.
Exactly. Protein is completely non-negotiable. When you consume dietary protein, whether from meat, fish, eggs, or high-quality plant sources, your digestive system breaks it down into individual amino acids.
The building blocks.
These amino acids are the literal biological building blocks required for collagen synthesis. But collagen requires specific amino acids in high concentrations, predominantly glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline.
Glycine and proline.
If your diet is deficient in these specific amino acids, it does not matter how much IL-15 your muscles send to your skin. The fibroblasts will receive the order to build. They will turn on their mitochondrial power plants, but they will look at the assembly line and see no materials.
The factories are open, but the supply chain is broken.
Exactly. The synthesis cannot happen without the specific amino acid precursors.
You can't build a brick wall without bricks, and you can't build a steel cable without iron. Okay, the second vital component, vitamin C. I feel like we always hear about vitamin C in the context of fighting off a cold or drinking orange juice in the winter, but the research emphasizes it heavily for skin structure. Why is vitamin C so critical?
Vitamin C is an absolutely essential cofactor in the biochemical process of collagen synthesis. Cofactor means the chemical reaction literally cannot proceed without it.
It's the catalyst.
Let's go back to those amino acids, proline and lysine. Inside the fibroblast, enzymes have to add a hydroxyl group to these amino acids, a process called hydroxylation, to allow the collagen fibers to twist into that strong triple helix and cross-link with each other.
Okay, so twisting them together.
The enzymes that perform this hydroxylation absolutely require vitamin C to function. Without adequate vitamin C, the collagen fibers cannot cross-link. They remain runk, unstable, and eventually fall apart.
This makes me think of scurvy. When sailors in the 1700s didn't have fresh fruit, they got scurvy. And a major symptom of scurvy is that your teeth fall out and old scars literally open up.
That is the perfect historical example. Scurvy is simply the extreme physiological manifestation of failed collagen synthesis due to a complete absence of vitamin C.
The old scars open up.
Yes, because the body is constantly breaking down and rebuilding the collagen in scar tissue, but without vitamin C, the rebuilding phase stops entirely and the tissue just dissolves. It proves how vital this single nutrient is to our structural integrity.
That is fascinating and horrifying.
Yeah.
Okay, the third dietary category, antioxidants. We talked about how alcohol wipes these out and how they defend against reactive oxygen species. How do we ensure we have enough?
You must source them consistently from nutrient-dense whole foods, berries, leafy greens, nuts, colorful vegetables. We need a massive, steady dietary supply of exogenous antioxidants to constantly replenish the reserves in our skin.
To fight off the damage.
By neutralizing those unstable reactive oxygen species before they can crash into our DNA or our collagen, antioxidants halt the oxidative skin damage at the molecular level before it can ever degrade the cellular scaffolding.
So if we look at this biologically backed protocol in its totality, cutting alcohol to stop the dehydration and inflammation, moving daily to release myokines and upgrade our cellular energy grids, eating real whole foods for specific amino acids and antioxidants, and ruthlessly eliminating refined sugar to stop glycation and MMP activation, it stands in stark, almost humorous contrast to the extreme internet subculture we started with.
It's a completely different paradigm.
The Looksmaxxers are buying weird neck harnesses, potentially paying thousands for dangerous, unproven surgeries, and tracking millimeter vectors on their phones. This actual biological approach is practically free. It doesn't cost anything beyond your normal grocery spending.
It is entirely free in terms of financial cost, yes. You don't need a specialized tool. But it demands a currency that is often much more difficult for human beings to part with. Relentless consistency.
And I have to push back here, just speaking for myself and probably a lot of people listening. This sounds almost too basic, right? Eat right, exercise, don't drink. We have heard this a million times since grade school health class. It feels like a letdown when you want a secret.
I completely understand that reaction.
If this is the true, hard biological secret to maintaining a youthful appearance and optimizing our physical form, why is it so incredibly hard for society to accept? Why do millions of teenagers gravitate toward the extreme pain of bone smashing instead of just eating some spinach and going for a heavy jog?
Because human nature fundamentally craves a shortcut. We want a quick fix, a secret hidden technique, or a novel tool that nobody else knows about. We want the result without the daily sacrifice.
I want a hack.
Exactly. And when things go wrong, when we are unhappy with how we look, we crave a scapegoat, which, for the Looksmaxxers, is their genetics. It is psychologically so much easier to say, I have terrible jaw genetics and I need a radical, violent intervention to fix my destiny, than it is to look in the mirror and say, I need to completely overhaul my daily habits, stop drinking soda, start lifting weights, and do it every single day for the next 10 years.
It's a bitter pill to swallow.
But biology is entirely indifferent to our human psychology. Biology doesn't care how many followers the fitness influencer has. It doesn't care how complex and scientific a caliper measurement looks or how much money a plastic surgery procedure costs. The biological machinery of your cells only responds to one thing: repeated daily biochemical inputs.
It's the unglamorous, inescapable truth.
Exactly. It's not glamorous. But as the literature emphatically concludes, if you want to truly optimize your biological systems, you have to stop fighting your skeleton and start mastering the cellular inputs.
So let's wrap up this incredible journey we've been on today. We started this deep dive looking at a dark, fascinating corner of the internet where teenagers are quite literally smashing their own jawbones with hammers, desperate to take control of their perceived genetic destiny.
And we ended up somewhere completely different.
Yeah, we ended up traveling deep inside the microscopic world of a skin cell, watching muscle-generated myokines trigger mitochondrial biogenesis and learning how sugar caramelizes our collagen.
The contrast between the myth and the science is striking, but the biological lesson is crystal clear.
The true way to Looksmaxx, if we were going to co-opt their term for reality, isn't found in a surgical procedure, a bizarre breeding technique, or a cold metal measuring tool. It is entirely about mastering your biological inputs. It's the unsexy daily grind.
Cut the alcohol to stop the diuretic and inflammatory destruction.
Move your body intensely every single day to turn your skeletal muscles into an endocrine engine that signals tissue repair.
Eat real whole food to provide the specific amino acid building blocks and drop the refined sugar to halt the crystallization of your collagen.
And I want to leave you with one final lingering concept to mull over as you go about your day. We spent a significant amount of time today dissecting how your skeletal muscles act as an endocrine organ, secreting invisible chemical messengers like IL-15 that travel all the way through your bloodstream to your skin, literally altering its genetic expression to keep it young.
It's a profound communication system.
If that incredibly complex, silent communication is happening right now, just between your bicep and your cheekbone, what other invisible conversations are happening inside your body at this exact moment? What is your gut microbiome whispering to your brain based on the highly processed lunch you might have just eaten? What is your heart signaling to your immune system based on the stress levels you are carrying today?
That is a wild paradigm-shifting thought.
You aren't just eating or exercising for the mirror. You aren't just trying to change how you look in a photograph. Every single time you choose a whole food over processed sugar, or choose a heavy workout over a drink, you are quite literally writing the biochemical code for an incredibly complex internal communication network.
You are the architect of that cellular scaffolding.
Your biology, your aging process, and your health are absolutely in your own hands.
It is a profound responsibility, but an incredibly empowering one once you understand the mechanics.
Well said. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Remember, change the inputs, change the outcome. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.